Tonight in the Flophouse, we discuss the sentient robot film Stealth. Sentient, a word I only learned how to pronounce after recording this podcast. Enjoy. Tonight in the Flophouse, we examine the Billy Zane vehicle Memory. Surely the best Billy Zane movie since the last one. On this episode of the Flophouse, we examine A Sound of Thunder, the movie that made Ray Bradbury prematurely roll over in his non-existent grave. In this episode of the Flophouse, we review the number 23, the scariest of all the base 10 integers, and now the special Halloween remix of the Flophouse theme. In this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss Saw 3, a movie that delivers exactly what it promises. It is, in fact, the third Saw movie. And now, the special Halloween remix of the Flophouse theme. Tonight on the Flophouse, we discuss Perfect Stranger, the finest Bruce Willis thriller since Color of Night. In this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss Mr. Brooks, the horrifying true-life tale of comedian Albert Brooks's serial-killing adventures. What do you mean I can't say that? Slander.
Just in time for Christmas, it's our Lindsay Lohan is an amputee stripper episode. We discuss I Know Who Killed Me. This is the next episode of the Flophouse. This Flophouse is the next Flophouse. This episode is next.
Tonight on the Flophouse, we discuss Good Luck Chuck, the horrifying tale of women inexorably drawn to have sex with Dane Cook. Tonight on the first annual Flophouse Floptacular, we discuss the Academy Awards and the Razzies. In this episode of the Flophouse, we do our best to stay conscious while watching Awake. On this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss Invasion, the only film to tackle the body-snatching menace, other than, all those other ones. On this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss the Bratz movie, the best doll-inspired film since Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story. This week on the Flophouse, we discuss the two most exciting words in the English language. Dragon Wars. In this episode, it's the Flophouse versus Alien vs. Predator 2. This is the untraceable episode of the Flophouse. So suck it, FBI. In this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss Jumper, the heartwarming true tale of the inventor of the jumper cable. On this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss Premonition, starring Sandra Bullock and a dead crow. On this special unedited episode of the Flophouse, we take a trip in our shitty movie time machine back to 10,000 BC. On this episode, we discuss One Missed Call, the scariest movie based on a thing that your answering service says. On this episode, we discuss Vantage Point, starring an all-star cast of people who didn't read the script. On this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss Wild Hogs. It's like City Slickers with twice as much leather. Tonight on the Flophouse, we talk about prom night, the stabbingest night in a young girl's life. On this, the second Halloween episode of the Flophouse, we discuss The Happening, a film that somehow doesn't even manage to live up to its name. On this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss the surprisingly long 88 Minutes. On this episode, we explore our feminine side with the romantic comedy 27 Dresses. Just in time for the gift-centered holiday of your choice, we discuss the Toy Store film Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. In this episode, we discuss the dance film Step Up 2, The Streets. In this episode, we get dangerous. Bangkok dangerous. In this new era of hope and change, we discuss Swing Vote, the world's most irrelevant political satire. In this unedited edition of the Flophouse, we learn the error of our ways by watching the slapstick right-wing comedy An American Carol. This week we discuss Kiefer Sutherland in Mirrors, the film that decided that the most scary part of any horror movie is that part where something unexpected is seen in a mirror, and said, let's just make a whole movie of that. On this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss Fireproof, starring Kirk Cameron, America's #1 religious star if you don't count Mel Gibson. In this episode, we discuss The Spirit, exactly the film Will Eisner would have made if Will Eisner was Frank Miller. In this episode, we struggle to find 3 ounces of things to say about 7 pounds.
On this episode, we discuss Beverly Hills Chihuahua. It's like Beverly Hills Cop, except for the cop is a dog and not a cop, and not Eddie Murphy, and the dog is from Beverly Hills instead of going to Beverly Hills. Otherwise, it's basically the same film.
In this special Flag Day episode, we honor those fallen in the Bride Wars. On this episode of the Flophouse, we discuss America's favorite holiday, at least based on number of movies made about it, the remake of Friday the 13th.
John Cena and Rennie Harlan? All hail the bad movie gods. We watched 12 rounds.
And now, one from the Blart. We talk about Paul Blart, Mall Cop. De Niro, Pacino, Gugino, Neutrino, Maraschino, Gran Torino. We discuss Righteous Kill.
In this episode, we continue to chronicle the mysterious twists in Nicolas Cage's acting career. We discuss Knowing.
On this episode, we welcome 2 werewolf experts to discuss the movie Skinwalkers.
In this episode, we discuss Obsessed, the movie that tries to destroy Obama's post-racial America.
Dybbuk Schmibbuk, pass the ham. We talk about the unborn. Kilmer, Asante, Roberts. We discuss a film called The Chaos Experiment. Also, before we get started, I'd like to apologize for the subpar audio quality in this episode. We discovered only too late that there was a problem with Stuart's microphone. I tried to fix it in post, but it's noticeable. Anyway, we decided to release it, and you can enjoy it or you can ignore it. But we hope it isn't too bad.
This week, we take on a movie made for anyone who ever played a video game and thought to themselves, I wonder what her story is. Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li. For the 50th episode of The Flophouse, we try a Flophouse first, discussing an animated movie. In this episode, Delgo.
We're the best at what we do. And what we do is watch X-Men Origins Wolverine with our contest winner.
In this episode, we discuss Dragon Ball Evolution, the movie that inspired Ben Stein to make his hit film, Dragon Ball Intelligent Design. In this episode, we discuss Hannah Montana the movie, the terrifying tale of a young girl with 2 totally different personalities. In this episode, we ask the question, can the filmmakers who brought us the Hong Kong Cocktail really deliver a boring movie? We discuss Gamer. Gerard Butler month continues. We discuss The Ugly Truth. In this episode, we discuss Whiteout, the film invented by Mike Nesmith's mother. In this episode, we wait until Stuart is out of the country before watching the movie about nubile sorority sisters. We discuss Sorority Row. First vampires, now werewolves. Is there any monster they can't ruin by making it sexy? We discuss Twilight, New Moon. After a month-long break, the Flophouse gang is together again to try and abide, law-abiding citizen. In this episode, we learn all about Steve. But really, can anyone learn all about Steve? I am Robot, and so is everyone else. In this episode, we discuss the Bruce Willis film, Surrogates. You know what would be cool? Angels with Uzis. That's what the 13-year-old boy who wrote Legion thought. In this episode, we discuss From Paris with Love, starring everyone's favorite action star, bloated John Travolta. In this episode, we discuss Repo Men. Twice the Repo Men of Repo Man, 1/1000th as good a movie. In this episode, we discuss the most terrifying horror movie ever made, John Travolta and Robin Williams in Old Dogs. In this episode, we try and cash in on the vampire craze by discussing Blood, the Last Vampire. A PG-13 remake of an Asian horror film? Those things never suck! In this episode, we discuss The Uninvited. At the request of our contest winner, we discuss Teen Witch. In this, our most juggalicious episode, we discuss the insane clown posse project, Big Money Rustlers. Of all the blockbusters last summer, one entirely failed to bust blocks. We discuss Jonah Hex. In this episode, we discuss the aptly named The Last Airbender. In this episode, we complete our Katherine Heigl trilogy by discussing Killers. On this episode, we discuss Devil, the scariest elevator-themed horror movie since The Lift. Turn the lights down low, grab a bottle of wine and cuddle up to your marital sex aid doll of Stuart Wellington, 'cause tonight the Flophouse is taking on Valentine's Day. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the Flophouse hosts wasting their lives. We discuss Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time.
Welcome back. We're continuing our coverage of the third annual Awards Floptacular, the night when all the podcast stars come out to shine, despite such a thing not existing. And who do I see coming down the red carpet but Daily Show writer and Flophouse co-host Elliot Kalin, resplendent in an English walking coat and a backpack. And here's his other host, Stuart Wellington, walking past, in a Speedo, giant belt buckle, and not much else. And here comes the third part of the co-hosting triumvirate, Dan McCoy, in a tuxedo made entirely of sadness. Not sure how they manage that. And, oh my god, it's the Flophouse house cat. House cat, who are you wearing tonight? All right. Well, the stars are all inside, so let's join them in the historic Dan's Apartment Theater for the third annual Awards Floptacular.
In this episode, we discuss Skyline, so named because that's the only part of Los Angeles you get to see in the film. In this episode, we discuss the terrifying tale of one boy's descent into madness. We talk about Gooby. In this episode, we discuss Night and Day, the 2010 Oscar winner for pun title that doesn't make sense. In this episode, we return to the Nicolas Cage well that never runs dry and discuss The Sorcerer's Apprentice. In this episode, we discuss Single White Female for Tweens, The Roommate. And remember to stop by www.flophousepodcast.com for information about our live Flophouse event. In this episode, we return to the Nicolas Cage well that never runs dry. We discuss Drive Angry. And check us out